The cold, sharp realization hit me when I saw the numbers, thousands of dollars missing from my account, months of secret withdrawals I'd never been told about. I felt my heart crack in a way I never imagined possible. My own son had been stealing from me for years. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if for even a second this feels familiar, I only ask that you like this video and subscribe. It will help me keep opening my heart. My name is Margaret. I'm 72 years old and I live in a small one-bedroom apartment on Chicago's North Side. Every morning, I wake to the same gray skyline peeking through my bedroom window. The distant rumble of the L train carries me into another day. The smell of roasted chestnuts from street vendors 3 floors below drifts in through the crack in my window. I shuffle through my days like a ghost, tending to errands my son David insists on, cooking dinners no one seems to appreciate anymore, swallowing the ache of being invisible in my own life. That Thursday in November started no different from any other. The mailman, Mr. Peterson, had been delivering to my building for 15 years. He always smiled and asked about my health. "Another statement, Mrs. Coleman," he said, handing me the envelope. I hadn't requested a bank statement. Usually, everything came electronically now. David had set all that up for me after his father passed. "It's easier this way, Mom," he'd said. "You don't need to worry about all those papers." I almost threw the envelope away. Almost. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way my arthritis had been acting up, making me move slower, think more carefully about each action. I sat at my small kitchen table, the one with the chipped corner where David used to do his homework 30 years ago. I opened the envelope carefully, the way I open everything now, with deliberate attention to details I might have missed when I was younger, when I was busier, when I trusted completely. The first page looked normal. My Social Security deposit, automatic withdrawals for utilities, the usual suspects. But as I flipped to page 2, then 3, then 4, my world began to tilt. There were transactions I'd never seen before. Withdrawals of $300 here, $500 there, sometimes $800 in a single day. All authorized by someone with access to my account. All signed off digitally by David Coleman, my son. My fingers trembled as I traced each line item. June 15th, $800. July 3rd, $450. August 22nd, $600. September 10th, $725. The numbers blurred together through my tears. This couldn't be right. David would have told me if he needed money. He would have asked. He always asked. Except lately, he hadn't been asking. Now I understood why. I walked to the window and stared out at the busy street below. A young mother pushed a stroller, her toddler pointing excitedly at a red bus. An elderly man fed pigeons near the corner, the same spot where he'd been feeding them for years. Life continued its rhythm while my foundation crumbled beneath me. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass and remembered the photo on my refrigerator, David and me at a Chicago Cubs game 2 years ago. He had his arm around me, both of us smiling. "Thanks for the tickets, Mom," he'd said that day. "You're the best." The best. The best what? The best person to steal from? The best fool who wouldn't notice? The best mark for his financial schemes? I had spent 50 years building a life, working 2 jobs after my husband died to pay for David's college education. I sacrificed my own dreams, my own comfort, my own future. When Robert passed from his stroke 10 years ago, I buried my grief to become everything David needed. Mother, father, friend, financial support system. I forgave every broken promise when he said he'd visit more often. I understood when he was too busy to call. I accepted when he forgot my birthday 3 years running. "Mom, I'm really swamped at work," became his favorite phrase. "Can you help me with rent again this month?" became his nighttime request, usually after 10 p.m. when I was already in my nightgown, ready for bed. "I don't have much left," I'd whisper into the phone, but somehow I'd always find a way. I'd skip my own medications, buy generic groceries, wear the same coat for 3 winters straight. Because that's what mothers do. That's what love looks like, isn't it? The cold silences after our conversations began to make sense now. The way he'd hang up quickly after I'd agreed to help. The way he never asked how I was managing, never wondered if I had enough left for myself. Sometimes I felt like nothing more than an automated teller machine, dispensing cash whenever the right buttons were pushed. But I told myself that was just my loneliness talking. David loved me. David needed me. David was my son. Except David was also a thief. I spent the rest of that Thursday reading every page of the statement 3 times. Then I went to my computer, the old desktop David had bought me 5 years ago, so we can stay in touch better, Mom, and logged into my bank account online. The pattern went back 18 months. Small withdrawals at first, 50 here, 100 there. Then growing bolder. 200, 400, 800. Always at ATMs I'd never visited, in neighborhoods I'd never been to. Always authorized by David's electronic signature. 18 months of theft. 18 months of looking into my eyes and lie after lie after lie. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my old recliner, the one Robert bought me for my 60th birthday, and stared at the city lights beyond my window. The apartment felt different now, like the walls themselves had been holding secrets. Every photo of David seemed to mock me. Every gift he'd given me, the coffee mug that said, "World's Greatest Mom," the lightweight blanket for my arthritic knees, felt tainted. Had any of it been bought with my own money? Was I funding my own deception? Friday morning came gray and cold. I made my coffee in the same chipped mug I'd used for 15 years and opened my laptop again. This time, I printed every single page of every statement I could access online. The old printer David had set up for me wheezed and complained, but it churned out page after page of evidence. The sound filled my small apartment, whirring, clicking, paper sliding into the tray. It sounded like revelation. It sounded like truth finally making noise. By noon, I had a stack of papers 4 inches thick. Every theft documented. Every betrayal in black and white. Every lie revealed in columns of numbers that didn't lie, couldn't lie, wouldn't lie to protect anyone's feelings. I called the bank. "First National Bank, this is Jessica, how can I help you today?" The voice on the other end sounded so young, so cheerful. "I need to speak with someone about unauthorized transactions on my account," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I can help you with that, ma'am. Can I get your account number?" I gave her the information, spelled out my name, confirmed my social security number. All the security questions David had helped me set up. All the protective measures that had failed to protect me from the person I trusted most. "I see several withdrawals here that weren't made by you directly," Jessica said after a few minutes. "But they were authorized by someone with legitimate access to your account. Is this a joint account?" "My son has access," I said. "For emergencies. In case something happens to me." "I understand. Were these withdrawals made without your knowledge?" "Without my knowledge." Such a clinical phrase for such a devastating betrayal. "Yes," I whispered. "They were made without my knowledge." Jessica walked me through the process of filing a fraud report. She explained that because David had legitimate access, it would be more complicated than typical identity theft. She scheduled an appointment for me to come in Monday morning to speak with a specialist. She was kind and patient, but I could hear in her voice that she'd handled these calls before. Adult children stealing from elderly parents. It wasn't uncommon. It had a name: financial elder abuse. I wasn't the first. I wouldn't be the last. That weekend, I moved through my routines like an actress in a play I'd forgotten I was in. I cleaned my apartment until it sparkled, as if external order could restore internal peace. I baked David's favorite cookies, chocolate chip with walnuts, then stared at them cooling on my counter and wondered why. Was I still trying to win his love? Was I still hoping this was all a misunderstanding? Sunday evening, David called. "Hey Mom, how was your weekend?" His voice sounded exactly the same as always. Casual, slightly distracted, like he was doing something else while talking to me. No guilt. No shame. No indication that he'd stolen nearly $15,000 from my account over the past year and a half. It was quiet, I said, testing my own voice, wondering if betrayal showed in vocal cords the way it showed in bank statements. "That's good. Listen, I might need to borrow a few hundred this week. The car needs some work and Sarah's been worried about the transmission." Sarah. His wife of 5 years, a woman who'd never met me with anything warmer than a polite smile and a quick handshake. A woman who I'd invited to birthday dinners and holiday gatherings, who I'd bought Christmas gifts for, who I'd welcomed into our family with the hope that she'd bring David happiness. Did she know? Was she part of this? Did they laugh about it together over breakfast, planning their latest withdrawal from the Bank of Margaret? "I need to think about it," I said. There was a pause. David had never heard those words from me before. Not once in 50 years had his mother ever needed to think about helping him. "Think about it? Mom, it's just a few $100s. "You always," I said. "I need to think about it." Another pause, longer this time. "Are you okay? You sound different." "Different?" Yes, I was different. I was a woman who'd just discovered her son was a thief. I was a mother who'd learned that love and trust were one-way streets in our relationship. I was different in every way that mattered. "I'm fine. I'll call you later this week." "Mom, wait," I hung up. For the first time in my life, I hung up on my son. My hands shook as I set the phone down, but something else was stirring inside me. Something that felt almost like relief. Monday morning arrived with the first snow of the season. I dressed carefully, choosing my best coat, navy blue with silver buttons, the one I'd bought for Robert's funeral 10 years ago. I wanted to look dignified, not like a foolish old woman who'd let her child steal from her. I took the bus downtown to the bank's main branch on LaSalle Street, carrying my thick folder of printed statements in a canvas shopping bag. The fraud specialist's name was Jennifer Martinez, a woman perhaps 40 years old with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Her office was small but professional, with certificates on the walls and a photo of 2 young children on her desk. She spread my statements across her desk like evidence in a courtroom. "This is extensive," she said after reviewing several pages. "The amounts are significant, and the frequency suggests a pattern of ongoing abuse." Abuse? Another clinical word that landed like a physical blow. Financial abuse? Elder abuse? My son wasn't just stealing from me. He was abusing me. "What are my options?" I asked. Jennifer explained the process. I could file formal charges, which would likely result in criminal prosecution. I could demand restitution through civil court. I could change all my account access and passwords, effectively cutting David off from my finances. Or I could do nothing and hope he stopped on his own. "Mrs. Coleman," she said gently, "in my experience, adult children who steal from their parents don't stop until they're forced to stop. The amounts tend to increase over time, and the justifications become more elaborate." Justifications? They tell themselves their parents owe them. That they're just taking their eventual inheritance early. That their parents have more money than they need. They create narratives that make the theft seem reasonable, even loving. I thought about all the times David had mentioned my comfortable retirement, my good Social Security benefits, my valuable apartment. All the times he'd referred to being my only child, his only heir. All the groundwork he'd been laying to justify stealing from me. That afternoon, I changed every password on every account I had. I removed David's access to my bank accounts, my credit cards, my investment portfolio. I sat in Jennifer Martinez's office and watched her type new security codes into their system. Each keystroke felt like cutting a rope that had been strangling me slowly for years. But the hardest part was still ahead of me. I needed to tell David what I'd discovered. I needed to confront the son I'd raised, the child I'd sacrificed everything for, the man who'd been systematically stealing from me while looking into my eyes and calling me mom. That evening, I called him. "David, I need to see you tomorrow evening. Can you come over?" "Sure, Mom. Is everything okay?" "You've been acting strange lately." Strange. That's what caring about your own financial security felt like to a thief, strange. "We need to talk. About important things." "Okay, that sounds serious. Should Sarah come too?" "That's up to you." He arrived Tuesday at 7 o'clock, alone. He looked tired, I noticed, dark circles under his eyes that I'd attributed to work stress but now wondered if guilt might be keeping him awake. He hugged me the same way he always did, quick and distracted, and sat on my couch in his usual spot. I had arranged the printed statements on my coffee table in neat stacks, organized by month. 18 months of theft, impossible to deny, impossible to explain away. "What's all this?" he asked, gesturing at the papers. "Bank statements. My bank statements. From the past year and a half." His face went pale. Not confusion, recognition. Not surprise, fear. In that instant, I knew Jennifer Martinez had been right. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was deliberate, ongoing, calculated theft. "Mom, I can explain this," I said, pointing to a June withdrawal of $800. "Explain this," I said, pointing to an August withdrawal of $600. "Explain this," pointing to September, to October, to last month. "Explain all of it." David ran his hands through his hair, the same gesture he'd made as a child when caught in a lie about homework or chores. But he wasn't a child anymore. He was 52 years old, and he'd been stealing from his elderly mother. "I was going to pay it back," he said finally. "When? When were you going to pay back $15,000? When were you going to tell me you'd been taking money from my account without asking?" "It's not that simple, Mom. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Sarah's student loans, the mortgage, the kids' expenses, the kids' expenses?" "What kids? You don't have children, David." "I meant, future kids. Planning for the future." Lie after lie after lie. Even caught red-handed, he couldn't tell me the truth. Even faced with printed evidence of his crimes, he was still trying to manipulate me. "You stole from me," I said quietly. "For 18 months, you stole from me. You looked me in the eye and lied to me while you were stealing my money. I never thought of it as stealing. What did you think of it as?" "An advance. On my inheritance. You always said everything would be mine someday anyway. An advance on my inheritance. As if my death was such a certainty, such an anticipated event, that he could just start collecting his payment early. As if my money had never really been mine at all, just something I was holding for him until he decided to take it." "Your inheritance," I repeated slowly. "You were stealing your inheritance." "Don't say it like that. You make it sound criminal?" "Because it is criminal, David. What you've done is called financial elder abuse, and it's a felony." His face changed then. The fake remorse disappeared, replaced by anger. "Financial elder abuse? Mom, you're being dramatic. It's family money. I'm your son. I was helping you manage, you were helping yourself. To my money. without my knowledge or permission. You would have said yes if I'd asked. You didn't ask. You never would have missed it. I did miss it. I've been wondering why my account balance seemed wrong, why I was running short some months. You made me doubt my own memory, my own math, my own sanity. The argument continued for an hour. David cycled through denial, anger, bargaining, justification. He tried to turn it back on me. I was getting old, maybe confused about my finances. He tried to make it about him. He was struggling, Sarah was demanding, he'd been too proud to ask directly. He tried to make it about love, family helps family, money shouldn't matter between mother and son. I was being cruel and legalistic about what should be a private family matter. But I had spent 3 days preparing for this conversation. I had thought through every possible excuse, every manipulation tactic, every way he might try to twist this back on me. I had Jennifer Martinez's words echoing in my head, adult children who steal from their parents don't stop until they're forced to stop. I've changed all the passwords, I said when he finally stopped talking. You no longer have access to any of my accounts. Mom, you can't do that. What if there's an emergency? What if something happens to you? Then I'll handle it myself. Or I'll ask someone I trust. Someone you trust? I'm your son. You're a thief. The word hung in the air between us like a blade. David's face crumpled, but I couldn't tell if it was genuine remorse or just frustration at being caught. I'll pay it back, he said. Every penny. Give me 6 months. You've had 18 months to pay it back. You've had 18 months to tell me the truth. I was protecting you from worry. You were protecting yourself from consequences. He left that night angry and defensive. No apology. No real acknowledgement of what he'd done. Just promises to pay me back that we both knew he couldn't keep, and angry accusations that I was overreacting to what he still insisted wasn't that serious. I sat alone in my apartment afterward, surrounded by the evidence of my son's betrayal, and wondered if I'd done the right thing. The silence felt different now, not lonely, exactly, but expectant. Like the quiet before a storm, or the pause between movements of a symphony. 3 days passed with no word from David. Then Sarah called. Margaret, David told me what happened. I think there's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That's what we were calling 18 months of theft now. No misunderstanding, Sarah. David stole money from my account. Repeatedly. For over a year. But you gave him access to help you. He was trying to help maintain your finances, he was stealing from me. That's a very harsh word, Margaret. This is family business. David is your only child, your heir. He's been under tremendous financial pressure, and maybe he made some poor decisions, but calling it stealing, what would you call it? Sarah paused. When she continued, her voice was colder, more calculated. I'd call it a family matter that should be resolved within the family. Without involving banks or lawyers or making threats. Threats. I hadn't made any threats, but clearly David and Sarah saw removing their access to my money as threatening behavior. Sarah, I need you to understand something. David stole from me. He didn't ask permission, he didn't tell me what he was doing, he didn't offer any explanation until I confronted him with evidence. That's not family decision-making. That's theft. And I need you to understand something, Margaret. David is my husband. Those financial pressures he's been dealing with, they're real. Sarah's student loans, the mortgage, trying to build a life together, it's not easy for our generation. Maybe David should have communicated better, but his heart was in the right place. His heart was in the right place. Taking money from his elderly mother's retirement account was somehow a loving gesture. I'm not changing my mind about the account access, I said. Then you're making a mistake. You're an elderly woman living alone. You need family support, not family conflict. Don't let pride destroy your relationship with your son. Pride. Standing up to thieves was pride. Protecting my own financial security was pride. Not letting my child steal from me was pride. After I hung up, I realized something important. Sarah knew. She'd known all along. She might not have been actively involved in taking the money, but she'd known where it was coming from. She'd benefited from it, enjoyed it, counted on it. And now she was trying to manipulate me into letting it continue. That weekend, my phone rang constantly. David, Sarah, then David again. Long voicemails explaining their financial situation, their struggles, their need for understanding and family support. Not one of them contained a real apology. Not one acknowledged the fundamental wrongness of what David had done. By Sunday night, I stopped answering the phone. Monday morning, I got a visit from my neighbor, Mrs. Ramirez. Elena Ramirez had lived in the apartment below mine for 8 years. She was a retired school teacher, 75 years old, with silver hair and laugh lines that spoke of decades of patience with difficult children. We'd exchanged pleasantries in the hallway, helped each other with groceries, shared the occasional cup of coffee on difficult days. Margaret, forgive me for bothering you, but I couldn't help overhearing some raised voices last week. Is everything okay? I almost said yes, everything was fine. That's what I'd been trained to do my entire life: protect family secrets, maintain appearances, never let outsiders see family dysfunction. But looking into Elena's kind eyes, I found myself telling the truth. My son has been stealing money from my account. I discovered it last week, and we had a difficult conversation. Elena's face showed no shock, no surprise, just sad recognition. How much money? Nearly $15,000. Over 18 months. Oh, mi hija. I'm so sorry. But I'm not surprised. You're not surprised? This happened to my sister 3 years ago. Her daughter was taking money from her checking account to pay for her husband's gambling debts. Rosa didn't want to believe it either, kept making excuses, kept hoping it was a mistake. What did she do? Eventually? She pressed charges. It was the hardest thing she ever did, but it was the only thing that stopped it. Elena sat with me for 2 hours that morning, sharing coffee and stories I'd never heard before. Stories of children who stole from parents, of elderly people manipulated by their own families, of the difference between family loyalty and family abuse. She had a calm wisdom that came from years of dealing with difficult situations, and she didn't try to tell me what to do. She just listened, and asked good questions, and helped me think through my options. The hardest thing, she said as she was leaving, is accepting that love doesn't always go both ways. You can love someone completely and still need to protect yourself from them. That afternoon, I made another appointment with Jennifer Martinez at the bank. This time, I didn't just want to secure my accounts, I wanted to explore pressing charges. Are you certain about this path? Jennifer asked. Criminal prosecution of family members is emotionally difficult, and there's no guarantee of restitution even if charges are filed. I'm certain that what he did was wrong, I said. I'm certain that he hasn't stopped on his own, that he's shown no genuine remorse, and that he'll do it again if he gets the chance. Those are excellent reasons to pursue legal action. Jennifer connected me with a victim's advocate named Carol Brennan, a woman who specialized in elder abuse cases. Carol was perhaps 60 herself, with gray streaks in her brown hair and a no-nonsense manner that I immediately appreciated. Mrs. Coleman, I want you to understand what you're facing if you decide to press charges. Your son will likely be arrested. This will become a matter of public record. Other family members may take sides against you. The legal process can be long and emotionally draining. Are you prepared for all of that? I thought about the question seriously. Was I prepared for David to be arrested? Was I prepared for our extended family to know that my son was a thief? Was I prepared to be seen as the vindictive mother who sent her own child to jail? I'm more prepared for that than I am to be stolen from for the rest of my life, I said finally. Carol nodded. That's the right answer. Let's file a police report. The police detective assigned to my case was a woman named Susan Torres, a detective who'd been working financial crimes for 12 years. She came to my apartment Thursday morning to take my statement, and she brought a gentleness to the process that I hadn't expected. Ma'am, I want you to know that what your son did is serious, but you're not the first parent we've seen in this situation. Adult children stealing from elderly parents, it's more common than people realize. Detective Torres reviewed all my printed statements, took photographs of the evidence, and explained the next steps. David would be contacted and asked to come in for questioning. If he admitted to the thefts, the district attorney's office would likely offer a plea bargain. If he denied them, the case would proceed to trial. What should I expect from him when he finds out I've filed a police report? I asked. Anger, most likely. Accusations that you're being vindictive or unrealistic. Possibly attempts at emotional manipulation, reminding you that he's your only child, threatening to cut off contact, that kind of thing. And if those tactics don't work? Then sometimes the anger escalates. Sometimes they try to turn other family members against you, spread rumors about your mental state, things like that. Detective Torres was right. David called me Friday evening, and his voice was different from any tone I'd ever heard from him before. I can't believe you called the police on your own son. I can't believe my own son stole from me. This is going to destroy our family. You destroyed our family when you decided to steal from me. Mom, please. I'm begging you. Call them back. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I'll pay back every penny, I promise. Please don't do this to me. For just a moment, hearing my child beg, my resolve wavered. This was my son. The boy I'd rocked to sleep, taught to ride a bicycle, cheered for at Little League games. The man I'd been proud of when he graduated college, when he got his first job, when he got married. How had we gotten here? David, I need you to listen to me carefully. I love you. I have always loved you. But what you did was wrong, and I can't pretend it wasn't wrong just because you're my son. So you're choosing money over family? I'm choosing honesty over theft. This is going to ruin my life. Do you understand that? A criminal record will destroy my career, my marriage, everything I've built. You should have thought about that before you stole from me. I wasn't stealing. It was family money. Even facing criminal charges, he couldn't admit what he'd done. Even knowing that his lies had been exposed, he couldn't tell the truth. Detective Torres had been right about that too. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. David hired a lawyer, an expensive attorney who immediately began portraying me as a confused elderly woman who didn't understand modern financial management. Sarah called me repeatedly, crying, begging me to drop the charges, explaining how this was destroying their marriage and David's career. Extended family members started calling, cousins I hadn't heard from in years, suddenly very concerned about family harmony and very critical of my overreaction to what they called a private matter. "Margaret, don't you think you're being a little harsh?" my cousin Patricia asked during one of these calls. "Family should stick together. David made a mistake, but prison won't help anyone." A mistake. 18 months of systematic theft was oops, my finger slipped on the withdrawal button. "Patricia, would you let your son steal $15,000 from your retirement savings? That's different. David was trying to help you manage your finances. By taking money without telling me? Maybe he was protecting you from worrying about investment decisions." It was incredible how many people were willing to rewrite history to make David's theft seem reasonable. It was incredible how many supposedly loving family members were more concerned with David's reputation than with the fact that he'd robbed his elderly mother. But not everyone sided with David. Elena Ramirez checked on me daily, bringing soup when I was too upset to cook, sitting with me when the loneliness felt overwhelming. My old friend Betty from the church volunteered to be a character witness if the case went to trial. Even Detective Torres called periodically just to see how I was holding up emotionally. "The hardest part for victims in these cases isn't usually the financial loss," she told me during one of these calls. "It's the betrayal by someone they trusted completely. It's discovering that love wasn't mutual." "Are you seeing a counselor?" I wasn't, but Detective Torres recommended someone, Dr. Patricia Wilson, a therapist who specialized in family trauma and elder abuse. I made an appointment for the following week. Dr. Wilson's office was warm and comfortable, with soft lighting and 2 chairs facing each other rather than the traditional couch and desk setup. She was perhaps 55, with prematurely white hair and the kind of steady presence that made honesty feel safe. "Tell me what brings you here today, Margaret." I told her everything. The discovery, the confrontation, the police report, the family pressure. She listened without judgment, asked thoughtful questions, and helped me understand things I'd been struggling with. "You mentioned feeling guilty about pressing charges. Can you tell me more about that guilt?" "He's my son. I raised him. If he turned out to be someone who steals from his own mother, doesn't that mean I failed as a parent?" "Do you think you taught him to steal?" "Of course not. Do you think you taught him that stealing was acceptable?" "No. Just the opposite." "Then how is his decision to steal your fault?" It seemed so simple when she put it that way, but the guilt had been eating at me for weeks. Good mothers don't send their sons to jail. Good mothers find ways to work things out within the family. Good mothers prioritize family harmony over their own financial security. "Margaret, let me ask you something. If David had stolen $15,000 from his employer, would you expect the employer to press charges?" "Yes, of course." "If David had stolen $15,000 from his neighbor, would you expect the neighbor to press charges?" "Yes." "Then why should theft from his mother be treated differently?" "Because I'm his mother. Because I love him unconditionally. Because family is supposed to forgive everything, endure everything, sacrifice everything for each other." But even as I thought these things, I knew they weren't really true. Love doesn't require accepting abuse. Family doesn't mean having no boundaries. Being someone's mother doesn't make you their property. Dr. Wilson and I talked for an hour that first session, and I scheduled another appointment for the following week. For the first time since discovering the thefts, I felt like someone understood that this wasn't about money, it was about trust, respect, and what it means to love someone who doesn't love you back the same way. The legal process moved slowly. David's attorney filed motions to dismiss the charges, claiming the thefts weren't really theft since David had legitimate access to my accounts. The prosecutor's office pushed back, arguing that having access didn't equal having permission to withdraw money without my knowledge. While the lawyers battled, my life began to change in unexpected ways. With David no longer calling to ask for money, with Sarah no longer pressuring me to help with their endless financial crises, I had mental and emotional space I hadn't experienced in years. I started reading again, mystery novels from the library, biographies of women who'd overcome difficult circumstances, books about aging gracefully and building new chapters of life after major losses. Elena introduced me to her book club, a group of 6 women who met monthly at the library branch on Lincoln Avenue. They welcomed me warmly, and I discovered that several of them had survived their own family betrayals. Rosa, Elena's sister, was there, the woman whose daughter had stolen money to pay gambling debts. Another member, Joyce, had been financially exploited by her late husband's son from his first marriage. They shared their stories without shame, and I began to understand that what had happened to me wasn't unique, wasn't a reflection of my failure as a parent, wasn't something I needed to hide from the world. Spring arrived early that year, and with it came David's trial date. His attorney had eventually abandoned the motion to dismiss and negotiated a plea bargain. David would plead guilty to financial exploitation of an elderly person, pay restitution, and serve probation with community service. No jail time, which was a relief I didn't expect to feel. On the day of his plea hearing, I sat in the courtroom and watched my son stand before a judge and admit, legally and officially, that he had stolen from me. His voice was quiet but clear as he gave his statement. "Yes, Your Honor, I took money from my mother's account without her knowledge or permission." It should have felt like victory, but mostly it just felt sad. Sad that it had come to this, sad that legal proceedings had been necessary to extract honesty from my own child, sad that our relationship had been built on such fundamentally unequal terms that he'd felt entitled to steal from me. After the hearing, David approached me in the hallway outside the courtroom. Sarah stood nearby, her face tear-stained and angry. "I hope you're satisfied," he said quietly. "I'm satisfied that you finally told the truth. This destroyed everything, Mom. My career, my marriage, my reputation. I hope it was worth it." I looked at my son, my 52-year-old son who was still trying to make his crimes my fault, and felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Peace. "David, I didn't destroy anything. You did that when you decided to steal from me. I just refused to pretend it didn't happen." He walked away without another word, Sarah following him, and I realized I might never see them again. He might never forgive me for refusing to be his victim. He might cut me out of his life entirely rather than face the ongoing reality of what he'd done. And standing there in that courthouse hallway, I realized that was okay. I couldn't control David's choices, not his choice to steal from me, not his choice to lie about it, not his choice to prioritize his own comfort over our relationship. I could only control my own choices. And I'd chosen dignity over theft, honesty over manipulation, self-respect over family harmony at any cost. 6 months later, David had made his first restitution payment, a check for $200 out of the $15,000 he owed me. At that rate, he'd pay me back in full sometime around my 95th birthday. But the money wasn't really the point anymore. I had moved to a new apartment, a one-bedroom place in Lincoln Park with better light and a view of the lake. Elena helped me pack and unpack, and her book club friends brought me housewarming gifts and helped me arrange my furniture. Betty from church contributed a beautiful plant for my new living room. Dr. Wilson helped me work through the grief of losing the son I thought I had and learning to accept the son I actually had. The new apartment came with new routines. Morning coffee on my small balcony, watching the sunrise over Lake Michigan. Afternoon walks in the park, sometimes alone, sometimes with Elena or other friends I'd been too exhausted to maintain relationships with when all my emotional energy was going to David's crises. Evening reading in my comfortable chair, books I chose because they interested me, not because they might impress someone or serve someone else's needs. I also started volunteering at a local organization that helped seniors navigate financial scams and family exploitation. It turned out that my experience with David wasn't unusual at all. Adult children stealing from elderly parents was almost epidemic, but most victims were too ashamed to report it, too afraid of family consequences to seek help. I became someone who could sit with newly discovered victims and tell them, "This isn't your fault, and you don't have to accept it." On Thanksgiving, instead of hosting the traditional dinner that nobody ever seemed grateful for anyway, I joined Elena's family celebration. Her daughter and grandchildren welcomed me warmly, included me in their traditions, treated me like the honorary grandmother I'd always wanted to be. No one asked me to pay for anything, cook anything, or prove my love through exhaustive service. They just seemed genuinely happy to have me there. Christmas brought a card from David, the first communication I'd received from him since the courthouse. Inside, a brief note: "Mom, I know I hurt you. I'm working on understanding why I made those choices. Maybe someday we can talk. Maybe someday." I tucked the card into my memory box and continued with my holiday preparations. I'd bought myself a small tree, decorated it with ornaments I actually liked, invited Elena over for Christmas morning coffee. No expectations, no obligations, no walking on eggshells to avoid triggering someone else's anger. It was the most peaceful Christmas I'd had in decades. By winter's end, I realized something profound: I was happier. Not just content, not just making the best of a difficult situation, but actually happier than I'd been in years. The constant anxiety about David's financial crises was gone. The exhaustion of trying to solve problems I hadn't created was gone. The walking on eggshells feeling of never knowing when I'd be asked to sacrifice something else was gone. In its place was something I'd almost forgotten existed: the simple pleasure of living my own life on my own terms. I started taking art classes at the community college. Beginner's watercolor, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for when I was busy subsidizing David's lifestyle. My paintings were terrible at first, but I didn't care. Nobody was judging them, nobody needed them to be perfect, nobody's opinion of me depended on my artistic skill. I learned to paint flowers, landscapes, abstract designs that pleased only me. There was something deeply satisfying about creating something beautiful just for the joy of creating it, something healing about focusing on color and light and form instead of other people's problems and demands. Spring brought news that David had lost his job. Not because of the criminal conviction, that had been handled quietly, but because of ongoing financial problems that had finally caught up with him. Sarah called to tell me this, clearly hoping I'd offer to help again. "Margaret, I know things have been difficult between you and David, but he's really struggling now. We might lose the house." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. I didn't want David to suffer. I didn't want his life to fall apart. But I also wasn't going to rescue him from the consequences of his choices. "Could you maybe help with just a few months of mortgage payments? Just until he finds something new?" "No, Sarah. But he's your son. He's your only family. He's my son, but he's not my responsibility. And he's not my only family anymore." After I hung up, I realized that was true. David wasn't my only family. Elena had become like a sister to me. The women in our book club had become dear friends. Betty from church called me weekly just to check in. Dr. Wilson had helped me understand that family isn't just about blood relations, it's about the people who show up for you, who care about your well-being, who treat you with respect and affection. David had a family too, Sarah, his in-laws, his cousins who'd criticized me for pressing charges. If he needed help, he could ask them. He could get a second job, sell his house, downsize his lifestyle. He could take responsibility for his choices and figure out solutions that didn't require stealing from elderly relatives. What he couldn't do anymore was treat me like an unlimited ATM with no feelings, no needs, no right to financial security in my old age. Summer arrived with its warmth and longer days, and I planned something I'd never done before, a solo vacation. A week in Maine, staying at a small bed and breakfast near the coast, visiting lighthouses and art galleries and lobster shacks. Elena offered to come with me, but I wanted to try traveling alone, to see if I could enjoy my own company without the constant background worry about what crisis might be waiting for me at home. The trip was wonderful. I ate what I wanted, slept as late as I wanted, spent entire afternoons reading on the beach without anyone asking me for anything. I struck up conversations with other travelers, joined a lighthouse tour, bought myself a beautiful watercolor painting from a local artist. For 6 days, I was just Margaret, not David's mother, not anyone's financial resource, not someone responsible for solving other people's problems. When I returned home, there were 17 voicemails from David and Sarah. David had been evicted from his apartment, his car had been repossessed, and they needed a place to stay, just temporarily, while they got back on their feet. The old Margaret might have felt guilty for being unreachable during their crisis. The old Margaret might have offered to let them move in, or scrambled to find them money for a deposit on a new place. But the new Margaret, the Margaret who'd learned to paint watercolor flowers and take solo vacations and choose her own family, simply deleted the messages without calling back. Dr. Wilson and I talked about this decision during our next session. By now, I was seeing her monthly rather than weekly, more for maintenance and growth than crisis management. "How do you feel about not responding to their emergency?" she asked. "Peaceful," I said, and realized it was true. A year ago, those messages would have ruined my vacation and sent me into panic mode, trying to figure out how to fix everything for them. Now, their emergencies aren't my emergencies anymore. What changed? I thought about the question. What had changed? Everything, really. My understanding of what I owed other people. My definition of love and family. My sense of my own worth and my own rights. I learned the difference between loving someone and being their victim, I said finally. Dr. Wilson smiled. That's probably the most important lesson anyone can learn. Fall brought news through the family grapevine that David and Sarah were getting divorced. Apparently, the financial stress and his criminal conviction had been too much for their marriage to survive. David had moved in with his cousin Mike, the same Mike who'd called me 8 months earlier to criticize my overreaction to being stolen from. I wondered if Mike's opinion of David's financial management skills had evolved now that he was living with the consequences. I felt sad about the divorce, but not guilty. I hadn't caused their marriage problems by refusing to be stolen from. David had caused them by stealing from me in the first place, by lying to his wife about where their extra money was coming from, by building their lifestyle on a foundation of theft and deception. Around this time, I made an unexpected decision. I decided to write about my experience. Not for publication, just for myself, as a way of processing everything that had happened and everything I'd learned. Dr. Wilson had suggested journaling months earlier, but I'd resisted, thinking it was too self-indulgent or too painful to revisit. But sitting at my small desk in my sunny apartment, looking out at the lake, I found that writing about the experience was actually healing. Putting the whole story down on paper helped me see the patterns I'd missed while living through it, the gradual escalation of David's entitlement, the way he'd conditioned me to accept smaller violations of my boundaries before attempting larger ones, the sophisticated manipulation tactics he'd used to keep me confused and compliant. I wrote about the guilt I'd felt, and how I'd worked through it. I wrote about the grief of losing the son I thought I had and learning to accept the son I actually had. I wrote about the unexpected joy of discovering that life could be better at 73 than it had been at 63, that losing a relationship built on exploitation could create space for relationships built on mutual respect and genuine affection. When I finished writing, nearly 50 pages, handwritten in the journal Elena had given me for Christmas, I felt like I'd completed something important. Not just the story, but the transformation itself. I was no longer the woman who discovered those bank statements in her kitchen 18 months ago. I was someone new. Winter came again, my second winter in the new apartment, my second winter of living life on my own terms. David sent another Christmas card, this one with a longer note. Mom, I've been going to counseling, working on understanding why I made such bad choices. I know I hurt you, and I know sorry isn't enough. I'm not asking for your forgiveness yet, because I haven't earned it. But I want you to know that I finally understand what I did was wrong. Not just legally wrong, but morally wrong. You deserved better from me. I hope someday I can be the son you deserved. Love, David. It was the first real apology he'd ever given me. No justifications, no blame shifting, no requests for money or reconciliation. Just acknowledgement of wrongdoing and acceptance of responsibility. I wrote back, the first communication I'd initiated with him since that confrontation in my old living room. David, thank you for your letter and your honesty. I'm glad you're getting the help you need. I love you and I always will, but trust takes time to rebuild. I hope you continue working on yourself, not because of what it might mean for our relationship, but because you deserve to be someone you can be proud of. Take care of yourself. Mom. Spring brought another milestone, the final restitution payment. David had managed to pay back the entire $15,000, partly through his monthly payments and partly through a lump sum he'd sent after selling his car and moving to a smaller apartment. With the money came a note, this doesn't make what I did okay, but at least it's one piece of the damage I can repair. I deposited the check and then did something that surprised even me. I donated half of it to the organization where I'd been volunteering, the one that helped seniors avoid and recover from financial exploitation. It felt right to turn something that had started with theft into something that might prevent other families from going through what David and I had experienced. By now, I had been working with Dr. Wilson for nearly 2 years, and our sessions had evolved from crisis counseling to something more like life coaching. We talked about goals and dreams, about the future I wanted to create for myself, about the relationships I wanted to cultivate and the boundaries I wanted to maintain. What do you want your life to look like 5 years from now? She asked during one session. 5 years from now, I'd be 78 years old. Old enough that I might need more help with daily tasks, old enough that health issues might become more significant, but also old enough to have perspective on what really mattered, what was worth my time and energy and emotional investment. I want to be surrounded by people who genuinely care about me, I said. I want to keep learning new things, keep contributing something positive to the world. I want to feel proud of how I've lived my life, not guilty about the ways I've failed to meet other people's expectations. What about David? Do you want him to be part of that future? It was a question I'd been avoiding, even in my own thoughts. Did I want a relationship with my son? Could I ever trust him again? Was it possible to love someone while maintaining the boundaries necessary to protect myself from them? I want David to be healthy and happy, I said slowly. I want him to become someone who can have honest, respectful relationships with people he loves. If he becomes that person, then yes, I'd like him to be part of my life. But if he doesn't, I won't sacrifice my peace and well-being trying to maintain a relationship with someone who can't treat me with basic honesty and respect. Dr. Wilson nodded. That sounds like a healthy, mature approach. You're leaving the door open for reconciliation, but only on terms that protect you from further harm. That's exactly what I was doing. I was learning to love David without being victimized by him, to hope for his growth without being responsible for his choices, to maintain my own well-being regardless of what he decided to do with his life. 3 years after discovering those bank statements, I received an unexpected phone call from David. Not asking for money, not announcing a crisis, just calling to talk. Hi Mom. I know it's been a while since we've spoken. I was wondering if you'd be willing to meet for coffee sometime. Not to ask for anything, just to talk. If you're not comfortable with that, I understand. I agreed to meet him at a small cafe near my apartment, a public place where I'd feel safe and could leave easily if the conversation went poorly. I was nervous driving there, unsure what to expect, hoping this wasn't another manipulation attempt. David looked different when I saw him. Older, quieter, something in his posture that suggested humility rather than the defensive anger I remembered from our last encounters. He hugged me briefly, gently, and we sat across from each other at a small table by the window. "You look good, Mom." "Happy." "I am happy," I said, and realized it was completely true. "How are you doing?" "Better than I was. Still working on myself, still in therapy. I have a job I like, a small apartment I can afford without stealing from anyone. It's not the life I thought I wanted, but it's honest." We talked for an hour. He asked about my life, seemed genuinely interested in my volunteer work and my art classes and my friendships. He told me about his job. He was working as a bookkeeper for a small nonprofit, using his financial skills to help an organization that provided services to seniors. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "I think about what I did to you every day," he said as we prepared to leave. Not in a self-pity way, but trying to understand how I became someone who could do that to his own mother. "I'm not that person anymore, but I know that's something I have to prove, not just claim." "I appreciate that," I said. "And I appreciate you not asking me to fast forward through the trust-building process. Can we do this again sometime? Just coffee, just talking?" I thought about it. The conversation had been honest, respectful, focused on connection rather than extraction. David had seemed genuinely interested in my well-being rather than just managing my opinion of him. It felt safe. "Yes," I said. "I'd like that." We began meeting monthly for coffee. Slowly, carefully, we started rebuilding something that resembled a relationship. Not the old relationship, that had been built on my unlimited giving and his unlimited taking. This new version had boundaries, honesty, mutual respect. David never asked me for money. I never offered solutions to problems he shared. We were learning to be two adults who cared about each other without being enmeshed in each other's crises. On my 75th birthday, David gave me a card with a check inside, not a request for money, but a gift to me. $100, with a note, "For your art supplies, or whatever makes you happy. Thank you for teaching me that love doesn't mean having no boundaries. Happy birthday, Mom." It wasn't a fortune, but it represented something precious, the first money that had ever traveled from David to me without coercion, manipulation, or guilt. Just a son honoring his mother on her birthday, the way it should have been all along. Elena threw me a birthday party that year, a small gathering with our book club friends, Betty from church, Dr. Wilson, and a few other people who'd become important to me. David wasn't there. We weren't ready for that level of integration yet, but I wasn't sad about it. I was surrounded by people who loved me genuinely, who celebrated me without expecting anything in return. "Make a wish," Elena said as I prepared to blow out the candles on the chocolate cake she'd baked for me. I looked around the table at these faces, all smiling at me with undemanding affection, and realized I didn't need to wish for anything. I had already received everything I'd really wanted: self-respect, genuine relationships, peace of mind, and the knowledge that I could survive anything, even the betrayal of my own child. But I made a wish anyway, that other people in situations like mine would find the courage to protect themselves, the support to rebuild their lives, and the peace that comes from choosing dignity over dysfunction. As I write this now, on a quiet Sunday morning in my apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, I can see sailboats on the water and families walking along the shoreline. David and I had coffee yesterday. Our relationship continues to slowly heal, built now on honesty rather than exploitation. Sarah remarried and moved to California. We exchange Christmas cards. Elena is making lunch for our book club meeting this afternoon. Dr. Wilson and I meet quarterly now, just to check in and celebrate continued growth. The $15,000 David stole from me was eventually returned in full, but that was never really the point. The point was learning that love without respect isn't really love at all. The point was discovering that I could rebuild my life at 72, create new relationships, develop new interests, find new sources of joy and meaning. The point was understanding that protecting myself from people who would harm me, even people I love deeply, isn't selfish or vindictive or wrong. It's necessary. It's healthy. It's an act of self-love that creates space for all the other kinds of love to flourish. If you're listening to this story and recognizing yourself in it, if you've been supporting someone who takes your generosity for granted, if you've been accepting treatment that would appall you if it happened to a friend, I want you to know, you deserve better. You deserve relationships built on mutual respect. You deserve to keep your money for your own security and pleasure. You deserve to say no without being made to feel guilty about it. And if you've been the one taking advantage of someone's love and generosity, if you've been justifying exploitation by calling it family loyalty, it's not too late to change. But change requires genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing, sustained effort to make amends, and commitment to building new patterns based on respect rather than entitlement. The hardest lesson I learned through all of this is that we teach people how to treat us. For decades, I taught David that he could take from me without giving back, could lie to me without consequences, could treat me like an ATM rather than a person. I taught him these things through my acceptance, my excuses, my inability to set and maintain boundaries. When I finally started teaching him different lessons, that theft would be reported to police, that lies would be challenged, that my resources were not unlimited and unconditional, our relationship had to change. It nearly ended entirely, and it might have. But it was only by risking the loss of our unhealthy relationship that we created the possibility of building a healthy one. I can't tell you that every family situation like mine will have a happy ending. Some adult children who steal from their parents never acknowledge wrongdoing, never seek to make amends, never develop the capacity for respectful relationships. Some families are broken beyond repair by financial exploitation and the underlying attitudes that make it possible. But I can tell you that you don't have to accept being victimized, even by people you love. I can tell you that enforcing boundaries isn't cruel, it's necessary. I can tell you that there are professionals who understand these dynamics and can help you navigate them. And I can tell you that life on the other side of enabling dysfunction is better than you might imagine. The sunrise over Lake Michigan this morning was particularly beautiful, soft pinks and gold reflecting off the water, the city skyline silhouetted against the lightning sky. I made my coffee and sat on my balcony to watch it, grateful for this peaceful morning, this comfortable apartment, this life I've built from the ruins of my earlier assumptions about family and love and obligation. I thought about all the sunrises I'd missed when I was too anxious about David's latest crisis to notice beauty. I thought about all the dreams I'd deferred because someone else's immediate needs seemed more important than my long-term well-being. I thought about all the years I'd spent walking on eggshells, trying to keep peace with someone who had no intention of treating me peacefully. And then I thought about everything I'd gained by learning to put my oxygen mask on first: self-respect, genuine friendships, creative fulfillment, financial security, emotional peace. The trade-offs had been painful: confronting my son's theft, enduring family criticism, rebuilding my life from scratch in my 70s. But the alternatives: continuing to be stolen from, continuing to enable dysfunction, continuing to sacrifice my well-being for someone else's comfort, would have been worse. Much worse. Have you lived through something similar? Have you loved someone who confused your generosity with their entitlement? Have you found yourself funding someone else's lifestyle while wondering why your own security felt so precarious? Tell me your story in the comments. Share what you've learned, what you're struggling with, what you wish you'd known earlier. Let's help each other understand that we're not alone in these experiences, that family dysfunction is more common than we like to admit, and that it's never too late to choose dignity over exploitation. And if this story touched something in you, if it felt familiar or helpful or important, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Stories like mine need to be told, not because misery loves company, but because recognition leads to healing, and healing leads to hope. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for caring about an old woman's journey from victimhood to victory. Thank you for being part of the community that makes it safe to tell these truths, to admit these struggles, to celebrate these hard-won transformations. Keep opening your hearts, but remember, an open heart doesn't mean having no boundaries. Love generously, but love wisely. Give freely, but give by choice rather than manipulation. And never, ever let anyone convince you that accepting abuse is the price of maintaining relationships. You deserve better than that. We all do.